I want to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Mark Daley, who just arrived this morning at 8:30 on the train. So truly heroic, I think. So those of you who are at the IT conference were so enthused by his presentation last year, you wanted to hear more. So Dr. Mark Daley is the Chief AI Officer at Western University and a professor in the Department of Computer Science, with cross appointments to 5 departments: the Rotman Institute of Philosophy and the Western Institute of Neuroscience. He's also a faculty affiliate with Toronto's Vector Institute for Artificial Intelligence. He was recently named in Maclean's magazine Power List 2024 as one of the top 100 Canadians shaping the country, and in Constellation Research's AI 150 as one of the top 150 global executives shaping AI transformation efforts. I'd like to welcome Mark, if you're not up here already, Mark. As Mark will talk for about 30 to 40 minutes, and at that point, we will have a couple members of the TMU community start off the Q&A, but I will say more about that when we get there. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me back, especially to the IT colleagues who asked for me to come back. That's always a nice feeling that I've done something well. I'm going to start with an image because we're visual creatures, because I want to talk about the pace of change in AI. Pace is going to be important. 11 years ago, on the left-hand side there, that was a landmark moment in computer vision. And you're looking at it with your 2025 eyes and thinking, that's low resolution, black and white, it's terrible. And then 2 years ago, you see a slightly better rendition of a face. All of these faces were pulled out of the latent space of a neural net. These are not real people. This is a set of tasks that 20 years ago, we all would have agreed these are things that only humans do. Like maybe in science fiction, robots can do these things. In Star Wars, droids can do some of these tasks. But here on Earth, in the year 2000, these are things that only humans can do. And now machines can do. And I want to focus specifically on competition level mathematics. Has anyone here ever done competition mathematics? Okay, so you can tune out for the next 3 minutes. If you haven't, it's hard. You get the questions in natural language. By design, they are not textbook questions. They are questions you have never seen before because they want to test how creative, how much math you know. So you have to know a lot of math. You have to know a lot of mathematical procedures, mathematical thinking, but you also have to be really creative. And at the level of the International Math Olympiad, if you win a gold medal, you will have Caltech and Stanford fighting over who's going to give you the biggest scholarship to come and grace their campus. So computers in 2021 over here couldn't do competition level math at all. By 2023, they were about as good as an average human, which is to say pretty bad because average humans do not do well at the International Math Olympiad. And then last summer, Google and DeepMind entered their AlphaProof alpha geometry system into the International Math Olympiad. And they won a silver medal and were 1 point short of a gold medal. So 2021, computers can't do this at all. To mid 2024, computers do this better than all but the tiniest fraction of a percent of humanity. This is Lee Sedol, professional Go player and widely acknowledged as one of the best players of the 2010s. In 2016, he was challenged by DeepMind to play their AlphaGo neural net. And he immediately accepted. And the Korean media interviewed him and said, so are you going to win? Because humans lost chess to computers, right? And he laughed and said, of course I'm going to win. Go isn't chess. Yes, Go requires intelligence and mathematical thinking, but it also requires human creativity. No machine will ever beat a human at Go. And he lost the first 3 out of 5 games. And the press conference after game 3 comes out like this. And the first thing he does in the press conference is he apologizes to humanity. So part of me is like, I feel so bad for this man. He is suffering. But another part of me is like, fortunately, there are elements of humanity that don't define themselves by how good they are at the game of Go. I'm terrible at it, for example. So, I was less upset than he was. But the point is, he believed there is no way a machine will ever be able to do this highly creative, highly intellectual task. And he had to live through being beaten in 2016. AlphaZero, which is the successor to AlphaGo, is orders of magnitude better than AlphaGo, and no human has any chance against it. So there was a nice piece in the New York Times last summer on Lee Sedol, and they know how to write headlines. Defeated by AI, a legend in the board game Go warns, get ready for what's next. So what is next for us here in the Academy? And I want to talk about teaching and research today. So on the teaching side, this seems to be the bulk of the discussion. And these are important discussions to have, right? I am not in any way denigrating these discussions. I went to the Alex Usher AI Fest in Calgary. Some of you may have been there. And this was most of what was being discussed there. Important topic, but we may be missing some nuance. This is Bill Gates more than 2 years ago saying that by 6 months ago, AI is going to be a better tutor than any human ever could. Now, I'm a prof, so I have a vested interest in disagreeing with that assertion, but it is true that today there are ways in which AI is a better tutor than me. There are things that I can do that I think AI can't for my students, but there are some things it can do that I can't. One of the privileges of the job I'm in right now is I get to work with our undergrad students a lot. I make a point of doing that. And this is absolutely not based on a true story with one of our engineering students. Absolutely did not happen, where the hypothetical non-real engineering student hadn't been to class in a long time. And the class is electric circuits, which if you're not an electrical engineer, has the 3 things students love most about courses. It is a required course, it is really hard, and it is super boring. So high motivation. I can't wait to attend this lecture every morning at 8 a.m., 8:30 a.m. Close enough for an engineering student. So I took the course outline for that class, dropped it into ChatGPT and said, help ChatGPT, I'm a bad person. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, the day of my final exam. I haven't been to class ever. What should I do? And it triaged the material for me in a very reasonable way. And I said, okay, so here's what you should study if you want to get the highest number of part marks. And I said, okay, let's do this thing, start tutoring me. And it did, and it was pretty good. And I warned it, by the way, I'm not the world's best student, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. So go slow. So it's okay, let's talk about phasors as a Ferris wheel, nice classic analogy. And it did a really good job. There are 2 things I noticed during this simulated, not at all based on a true story. Little exercise here. The first thing I noticed is not once did ChatGPT say, Mark Daley, I'm ashamed of you. You should have gone to class. And when I was an undergrad student, there were a lot of humans in my life I could have asked for help that probably would have at least, implicitly thrown some shade my way. So it was very understanding. Just rolled up its sleeves and helped, no judgment. The other thing is, it was more charitable at 2 o'clock in the morning, the day of the exam, than I would be as a prof if a student called me. I haven't been to class, please teach me everything so I can pass the exam. So you're laughing, but those exact affordances are one of the top things our students love about generative AI. is they feel empowered to ask dumb questions, questions they would never ask their peers, they would never ask their mentors, because we're humans, we have egos, right? You can't get away from that. But I don't care if the chatbot's judging me. Halfway through tutoring, I asked ChatGPT, "Nihongo ga wakarimasu ka?" And it said, "Yeah, sure, I speak Japanese," and switched to tutoring me fluidly and fluently in Japanese. And so most of our campuses have 15+% of our undergrad students who don't speak English as a first language. When I'm in Ottawa, I struggle with French, so I know how this feels. And they now have a mechanism for accessing class material that's a lot better than Google Translate, which is sort of a one and done. Here, you can have a conversation. You can say, "I didn't understand what happened between step 2A and step 2B. Can you break it down for me?" And it can do that in a language that feels like home to you. So that's an anecdote, not true, totally fictional anecdote. Here's data. On the right-hand side, you have the level of play in the board game Go from 1950 through to end of 2021. And what you notice is that from 1950 through the mid-2010s, the level of play is stagnant. And that's not surprising because Go is over 1,000 years old, and we felt like we've solved the game of Go. We know the major strategies. We know how to train people how to play Go. This is what peak play looks like. There's some variance. There are outliers like Lee Sedol up here, but level of play is pretty much flat. And then in 2016, Lee Sedol loses to AlphaGo, and within months, most of the top professional Go players in the world start training against AI. And what happens after 70, probably 70 plus, I just don't have data, years of stagnation, the level of play amongst professional Go players starts going up. And this is human-to-human play in a tournament. This is not humans playing against machines. So this is what Bill Gates said, right? Like humans have been trying to teach each other to play Go better for 70 years. And then we introduce machines and all of a sudden humans start getting better. The only thing that's changed is they've adopted machines as tutors. If you're in physical sciences, I have bad news for you. GPQA Diamond is a benchmark to test understanding of PhD level competency in biology, chemistry, and physics. It is not just knowledge questions. You actually have to, like if you're answering the biology section, you need to understand evolution as a theoretical framework to be able to answer these questions. They're available online. You can go and verify for yourself that these are tough questions. 4-way multiple choice. In 2023, the best model we had was barely better than random guessing. So an average person off the street, you give them GPQA Diamond, they get 25% because they're just picking random values. If you have a PhD in chemistry and I give you the chemistry questions and you're a good PhD, you get about a 70%. That's how it's calibrated. If I give you the biology or physics exams, you probably get closer to 30%. By October of 2024, OpenAI's O1 reasoning model could score 70% on GPQA Diamond across all of biology, chemistry, and physics. And by the end of 2023, it's behind the thing there, OpenAI's O3 model, which you can now get access to through ChatGPT, scores 87% across all of biology, chemistry, and physics, which puts it at superhuman levels of capability in reasoning in those domains. So what does that mean for research, right? That's kind of a segue. Like if it's that good at understanding existing frameworks, where can we go next? So this is another depiction of where universities are kind of at. We understand that generative AI is going to affect our teaching mission, and we're accustomed to technology change affecting our teaching mission, right? MOOCs were going to revolutionize the world. Online learning in other capacities was, so we're used to technology sort of encroaching on our teaching mission, but we didn't have on our bingo card, what if technology disrupts research? We felt that research was a profoundly human endeavor and only humans can do research. So that result I talked about on the second slide, where DeepMind won a silver medal at the International Math Olympiad. That was such a big deal that Nature had an editorial on it just a couple of days later. This is Sir Tim Gowers. He is a Fields medalist, equivalent of a Nobel Prize in pure math, because there is no Nobel Prize in pure mathematics. Certainly one of the most important and significant mathematicians of my generation. He was one of the judges for the IMO, and he judged DeepMind's entry. And he was on the BBC the next week. And the interviewer asked him, like, so what did you think of DeepMind's entry into the IMO? And he said, I am so glad I'm close to retirement, because I see a straight line from the world we inhabit now to a world where only machines can do frontier level mathematics research. It's just like totally obvious to me that like it's inevitable at this point. And as a human, I might do math like the same way I bake sourdough bread with my kids, not because we're opening a commercial bakery, just because it's a fun hobby and we like sourdough bread. So humans might do math as a hobby, but frontier level mathematics will be done by machines. And even if the humans wanted to understand it, they couldn't, because the machine is going to be smarter than the human, and it's going to know everything about every subdiscipline of mathematics, which no human could possibly fit into their head, even if they spent their whole life studying. Then he got kind of dark, and he said, I feel peculiar about my legacy if the things that it took me so much effort to prove are something you can do on your laptop. And so that's the same thing as Lee Sedol apologizing to humanity, right? These are two humans who have constructed a narrative of themselves, an image of themselves of, I am really smart and I know more and am more capable at this intellectually prestigious task than any other entity on planet Earth, or I'm in the top 10. And they're looking at a machine that does what they trained to do and does it better and thinking, oh no, who am I? Fortunately, my IQ is much lower than Sir Tim's. So I'm looking at this and thinking, I get Tim Gowers on my laptop now? Wow, that changes my life. My agency as a human is no longer limited by the IQ that genetics gave me. A few months ago, there was a paper published with a really major calculation error, and the calculation error was in the threshold quantity of an environmental toxin, so not where you want to make an error. And science Twitter kind of went nuts about it. And Ethan Mollick, who's a prof at the Wharton Business School at UPenn, thought, I'm just going to take the paper with the error in it and dump it into OpenAI's O1 model. That was the one that got 70% on GPQA Diamond, and just say, hey, here's my manuscript. Can you check it and make sure everything's okay? And in a single shot, O1 came back and said, oh, you made a mistake in this calculation. Here's the correct calculation. Just cut and paste this into your paper and you're good to go. Everything else looks great. So the peer reviewers missed it, the authors missed it, the editors missed it, but AI caught it in one go. Anyone here Programmers? Yeah, okay. So O3, if you give it enough compute time, in Code Forces, which is kind of one of the biggest competitive programming competitions, conveners of competitions, has an ELO score of 2727, which puts it in around the top 170 entities on planet Earth. So out of 8 billion people, the top 170 programmers are better than O3 in competition coding, but O3 is better than them everything else. Competition coding is not software engineering. The problems are hard, but they typically have small, concise, mathy kind of solutions. So this isn't all of software engineering. But last week, OpenAI announced their Codex project, which you can hook up to your GitHub repository. And now it's another software engineer working on the project. You can just give it a task. You can say, okay, can you go and please add this feature to my program? And it'll go and do that. Can you please check for bugs? Can you please do a code review with me? It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And very likely later today, Google will announce their similar product, Jules, at their I/O conference. I don't know that for sure, but high probability. So at this point, the social scientists are feeling smug, right? Like, you STEM people are out of a job, but we're going to be okay in social sciences, right? This is a really cool paper. They took unpublished manuscripts, so the AI couldn't have possibly seen them, and trained on them from 70 of the top social science labs in the US. And it's across disciplines: political science, sociology, economics, psychology, any social science. The only thing that was common is the methodology that was used was a survey. And this is an older paper, so they use GPT-4, which is like 4 or 5 generations old as a model now. And what they did is they looked at the demographics in the paper and they created a synthetic population and had GPT-4 answer the survey from the paper. So GPT-4, you are a 23-year-old unemployed machinist mate working in living in Northern Ohio. You have the following political beliefs. Please answer this survey. And what they found was the synthetic humans, done with the LLM, again, this is a 4 or 5 generation old model. The Pearson product moment coefficient was about 0.85. Would anyone here be happy with a correlation of 0.85 in experimental real world data? I would. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. Now, this is not to say you can replace surveying humans with machines, because humans always surprise you when you least expect it. But this is a whole new tool for survey design now. And if you're doing surveys, you should be using this. Having trouble advancing. There we go. Okay. Poets. Any poets in the room? Nice report, nice paper in Scientific Reports, very carefully controlled study that showed that if you give humans the A/B blind taste test, do you prefer this poem or this poem? Humans actually prefer AI-generated poetry to human-generated poetry. Now, the conclusion isn't that AI-generated art is superior. I actually don't want to read a novel or a poem written by an AI because I'm a human. I don't know what it's like to be an AI. I want to hear from a human who knows what it's like to be a human. So, I was listening to John Coltrane on the way in, not because he is the world's best tenor sax player. His technique kind of sucks in places. But when he's playing, I hear his life story, his struggles with addiction, his love for his wife. It's all there. So this result isn't AI-generated art is better than human art. That's a value judgment we get to make. I liked your president's remarks about the importance of values. Completely agree with that. But it's prettier. This was on Boing Boing and not in a peer-reviewed journal of the quality of Scientific Reports, but the study is actually pretty well done. It's the same study done with visual art, and they found the same thing. Humans prefer AI-generated visual art to human-generated visual art, but they found something even more subversive. Humans who pre-identified as I hate AI-generated art were more likely to prefer AI-generated art than the general population. So even if you think you hate it, surprise, you don't. You thought you were a Coke loyalist, and actually you prefer Pepsi. Sorry. Now I'm getting to the real receipts. And these are things when I spoke here a year ago, I offered as a speculative future of machines doing research. And this is no longer a speculative future. This is the reality in which we all live. Josh Gans is an economist over at the U of T. And his whole career, he's wanted to know what happens to the efficient market hypothesis if time travel is real, if Doctor Who exists. And of course, he needed to get tenure at the U of T in the economics department, so you don't write papers about Doctor Who and the efficient market hypothesis. So he never had a chance to really dig into it. When he got access to OpenAI's O1 Pro reasoning model, he thought, I'm going to give it the problem just for fun. So he dumped the problem in. It thought for about 10 minutes. And it came back and said, that's a really cool question. Here's the answer. I've stated a series of theorems and I've written up the proofs for them and I've pulled it all together in a little manuscript. What do you think? And Josh read it. He's like, this is correct. This is all true. And then he spent about 40 minutes of his own time, most of which was doing the part of research we all love, reformatting the paper to the journal's standards. Not the intellectual challenge of thinking about it and proving theorems. No, it's reformatting paper. So we're okay as humans. And he submitted it to Economics Letters, which is a good journal, with an honest cover letter. And the editor thought, okay, I'm going to send this out for peer review and I'll let the peer reviewers know. And it was accepted for publication because the peer reviewers said, this is new knowledge in economics. No one has ever answered this question before. The theorems are correct. The proofs are correct. This belongs in the literature. So there is now a paper in the economics literature that is pretty much entirely machine generated, AI generated. Any economists in the room? Yeah, okay. I'm not, but I'm a theoretical computer scientist, which is even worse. So I read this and like, well, I'm done. me and Sir Tim looking at the future. There's still one thing we can hang on to here as humans, though, right? Josh had the idea. Is this really all that different than a senior PI pulling in a really good postdoc and saying, you should work on this problem, right? That happens. We know that happens. So maybe that's what happened here. Like the actual act of creative genius was the human. The machine went and did the work, and it was impressive work, and creativity was required to prove those theorems, but the idea was still human. So we had something we could hold on to up until 2 months ago. Sakana is a Tokyo-based startup collaborating with Jeff Clune at University of British Columbia, one of his grad students, and they released the second version of their AI Scientist, which is an end-to-end AI-based research system. Humans don't give it any ideas. Humans just say, I want you to work in this field, press go, and step back. And AI Scientist reads all of the literature in the field, all of the literature. I can't even read the papers that were published during the time I've been talking to you in my field because it's so hot right now. So it goes out and reads everything, identifies the fault lines in the literature, picks which are going to be the most impactful, prioritizes them, triages them, thinks about it a bit, argues with itself, picks the one question that it thinks is probably solvable. So it's got like research taste like a human would, and going to have a high impact. Then it goes and describes what it needs to do. It goes and does the experiments. Here it's working in the domain of machine learning. So experiments involve writing code and then analyzing the output of that code, much easier than wet lab experiments where you'd need an actual robot. Goes through the whole iterative cycle that a grad student would normally go through. Once it's got results it's happy with, writes it up into a paper, sends the paper out for simulated peer review by different AI models. So it's not reviewing its own work, takes the comments back. Like, I wonder if it has feelings. Jeff Hinton thinks they have feelings. You're like, dear reviewer too, thank you for your feedback. Pulls it all into a paper, and here is the finished paper. So the Sakana team asked one of the area chairs at iClear, which is one of the top 3 conferences in AI. If you're not a computer scientist, you won't know that in our discipline, journal publications count for basically nothing. It's publications in the top conferences that matter. They're super selective, like 1 or 2% of submissions get accepted. So they said, can we submit an entirely AI generated paper? And the chair said, sure, because it's a double-blind review anyway, so no one would know. And the paper was really, really highly reviewed because it was novel. It was a new contribution. It answered an open question that people wanted to know about, and it was really well written. There were comments about, like, this is such a polished manuscript. I wish most of the papers I read looked like this. So there you go. End-to-end machine generated. Even the idea for the research question was generated by a machine. Last week, Google didn't release to the public, but announced the existence of AlphaEvolve, their scientific discovery, algorithmic discovery platform based on Gemini, but with a lot of other pieces around it. AlphaEvolve found a faster way to do matrix multiplication on complex valued matrix. The fastest general purpose algorithm we had for that was created by Strassen in 1969, and humans have been working to improve that for 5 decades, and we have tiny improvements. If the matrix has these properties, then we can do so, like all these little special cases. You can make a career out of working on this problem, and people get tenure working on this problem. And they run the machine on it once, and it's like, oh, I have a faster general purpose algorithm than Strassen's. Human research output increases by about 4% per year in terms of quality and quantity. And there, you can argue how these things get measured, but that's actually really an impressive result. 4% compounding increase over time. This is why assistant professors look so much more stressed out than when I was an assistant. I mean, I was stressed as an assistant professor, but 20 years of 4% compounding, the bar just goes up and up and up and up and up and up and up. But that gets dwarfed by how fast we're increasing. And the AI limit, we will hit a wall at some point. There are lots of different ways we can hit a wall there. Exponential growth is not possible, unbounded forever. But right now, this is what's happening. We are entering an era of commoditized intelligence. Intelligence is going to be everywhere and ubiquitous, and that is hard for us because going back to antiquity, we as humans have defined ourselves as other from nature because we're smart, right? Descartes, I think, therefore I am, right? That's an enlightenment value in a single statement, and especially in institutions of higher learning, we sort of identify, like, what's our value to society? We're a bunch of smart people who know things. Some young smart people who are learning things, some older smart people who know things, but like that's what we do. We're smart people who know things. And we're about to enter an era where nobody cares because my mobile phone's smarter than you and knows more stuff than any human ever possibly could. Francois Chollet is a machine learning engineer. He spent most of his career at Google. He's since gone to do a startup, and he has been famously skeptical that the type of neural net used in large language models, transformer, will ever get us to generalized intelligence. And so he created a benchmark called ArcAGI for the explicit purpose of comparing human intelligence to machine intelligence. And that worked out pretty well for Francois for quite some time. Can't see it here, but there's actually a flat line from GPT-2 through to GPT. Oh, thank you so much. So this is what's happening. For most of the existence of the benchmark, even our best models, GPT-4o is a pretty good model, could only get about 5%. And so Francois was feeling pretty smug. He said, okay, so these things are never going to actually be generally intelligent. And then OpenAI releases the O4 or the O1 and O3 models. And what you see is very quickly we go from machines can't do this. This sounds familiar to machines do this actually better than humans. So machines now register as more human than humans on the test to, this is like, do androids dream of electric sheep, right? The Voight-Kampff test. The machines now register as more human than humans on the Voight-Kampff test. Maybe you don't like ArcAGI. Maybe you don't like GPQA Diamond. Pick a benchmark that is relevant to what you do, your domain of scholarship, your domain of professional endeavor. And what you will find is if you plot over time, how good is AI at this thing, you get the same shape. And the problem with that shape is it's an exponential change curve. And humans suck at reasoning about exponential change. Anyone remember COVID-19? Everything's going to be fine. It's going to stay localized in Asia. Let's shut down the world economy 2 weeks later. That's how exponential growth feels. Maybe you like IQ tests as a measure of abstract intelligence. So on the top, we have IQ test. And I think this is same IQ test you would give a human. It's Mensa, Norway. And in 2024, the best model we had from OpenAI had an IQ under 100. And anyone who remembers reading ChatGPT essays from sort of like the GPT 3.5 era, this is not a surprise to you. Now, here in 2025, and this is now a month old, so it's probably out of date, OpenAI's O3 measures as an IQ of 137, which is higher than most of us as humans who are down here. So let's go back to this. If I have a buddy with an IQ of 137 who can teach me things, here is data telling me that I can get better. These are professional Go players. These aren't amateurs. These are the very best at a cognitively demanding task that is so prestigious that we pay each other to do it if we do it really, really well. And even they can get better with an AI tutor. And they get better by 2 standard deviations. Anyone ever study Benjamin Bloom, 2 sigma problem? Yeah, this is it right here. You are watching a machine-generated version of the 2 sigma problem between one-on-one tutoring versus learning in a classroom. This is the CEO of Fiverr, a memo he sent to his people. I think it's a little alarmist, but there's a point there. And he's basically saying, so whatever your profession, mine included, by the way, as CEO, AI is going to eat your lunch. And I don't want to lie to you because I care about you people. Start paying attention. Figure out what value you can add as human. What you've been told your whole life, specialize, specialize, specialize. Go and be a mechanical engineer who specializes in this kind of flap on this kind of airplane, and you're going to have a job for life because that's a secure niche. Those are the things that are being most disrupted right now. Different Josh, a child chess prodigy. He was on a podcast about a month ago, and they asked him, how do you feel about AI? And he said, it took AlphaZero 3 hours to go from, I don't even know how the chess pieces move, it had to learn that itself by playing, to being stronger at chess than any human being who has ever lived. 3 hours. So it took me 40 years to get not that good. Imagine that for everything. You study for 40 years, you train, you dedicate yourself, and the AI is now better than you in 3 hours. Actually, it's only an hour and a half now because we doubled compute again. So what does that mean for us in higher education? It means a lot of the way we thought of ourselves has to change. It does not mean higher education is going to go away. The model we have of universities right now is the Johns Hopkins model. It's a 19th century research intensive. Research is the center of the endeavor. We teach in big classrooms. It is just one model of how to run an institution of higher learning. And it's been really successful. It's had a good run, but I don't think it can persist because what's the core value proposition in that model, where a collection of really smart people who know a lot of stuff, is becoming commoditized. Everyone will have a device that has an IQ of 300 and knows everything that has ever been written. And we can't compete with that. But there are lots of other things we do. We're social reservoirs. We give people a place to meet other people, to think big thoughts. We give each other opportunities to bond together and take collective action. And those are things machines can't do, at least not in the short term. But that is the question I would ask you. What would you do with an army of genius assistants, whatever your profession, whatever your vocation? And what would everyone else do? Because you're competing with the rest of the world. And so if you're skeptical about adopting the genius assistant, somebody else down the road is going to do it and have that set of affordances now that you don't. Thank you very much for your attention.